Do you support Donald Trump?
So mixed feelings on it. There's things that I do support that
If
he's
if
done.
if you could go back in time and either vote for Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, who would you vote for?
So I'll say this: I voted for him in 2016. I didn't vote in the last election, but I did have more support towards him than I did Kamala.
If
Actually, I didn't support
if
anything
you
about Kamala.
if you could go back in time and either vote for Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, who would you vote
Oh,
for?
yeah. If I only had those two options, I'm voting Trump.
Why so?
One, so I'm a veteran. During his first presidency, he did a lot of things for veterans. Made it
Like what?
possible to. So one of the things, veteran healthcare, made it possible for you to go and seek healthcare outside the VA because the VA is a very overwhelmed system.
One, that was
So
bipartisan. Two, he's cut the VA. Three, that
so
go ahead.
I, yeah, actually no, I'll let you go. I'll let you go.
Three, I would say that I think that you're violating your oath to the Constitution. He called for the termination of all rules, regulations, and articles, even those found in the Constitution. And I think that supporting a candidate that called for the termination of all rules, regulations, and articles, and even those found in the Constitution is a violation of your oath.
Yeah, so I mean, like I said, right? You gave me two choices back then. Definitely, he wasn't violating the Constitution at that point. He is now, which as a Hispanic, I don't agree with a lot of the deportation policies. First of all, I think it's kind of ridiculous that they can just approach you and identify you or detain you based off of how you look. So that's a whole nother mess that I don't even want to really get into that right now because it's just upsetting. But
Sure, sure. I just
going
want to let
going
you
back to
know
this,
he did call for the termination of the Constitution in 2022, which was prior to 2024.
fair enough. I obviously support the Constitution, living, breathing document, constantly changing. And, I don't even think a lot of your supporters even know the difference between the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, two different entities or two different things, right? So, Bill of Rights, part of the Constitution, but Constitution is its own, and like Constitution could be changed, right?
It's a part of the Constitution. It's like saying your leg is distinct from your body.
Yes and no, right? Like the Constitution is what we
What is the Bill of
use to.
Rights?
So the Bill of Rights is rights that were amended or they could constantly be changed. So the first 10 Bill of Rights came out, right? So, I mean, obviously freedom of speech, Second Amendment, my favorite,
It's the
right
first
to bear.
10 amendments of the Constitution.
Yeah. Yeah. And then everything after that are amended rights. So, or,
So if it's an aspect of the Constitution, it's not distinct from the Constitution necessarily. Like in a certain
no,
sense,
that's
it
what I'm
is.
saying.
It's
It
not
is,
like
it is a part, it is a part of it. I'm
I
not
know
saying it's two totally different things.
that's kind of what you're
I'm
saying.
saying that the Constitution. So the Bill of Rights, it's not that they changed; they're just amended.
So
Or
clearly, we do know what the difference.
yeah, but going back to the original point, as a veteran, the reasons I supported him gave us a lot of options. As a veteran that struggles with, PTSD, and I got diagnosed with bipolar disorder, a misdiagnosis from when I was in the Marine Corps. So I only found that out because I was able to seek private care that was covered
Well,
through the VA.
I don't dispute that, but that's also bipartisan. Democrats also supported that, and Donald Trump recently just cut the VA.
So he cut. He didn't cut. I won't say really funding because I get the same benefits regardless. It didn't change what I am
He
able to
he
get.
cut the amount of wait, so but he cut the amount of people who are supplying the VA, meaning that he cut it
Well,
for
you
a
cut
lot of
unnecessary
veterans.
jobs.
So he might it might not have cut within your area, but it absolutely cut around the U.S.
I guess I see it differently, right? Because I mean, I go to the VA like probably like 4 or 5 times a month for appointments. I have seen zero effect on that process due to any job cuts. And the only job cuts that I have seen are things like um, I forgot the name of the exact position. It's kind of like a therapist, but they do therapy with like music and shit like that. I don't know what specific job that is, but those are like jobs that he cut out. He didn't cut out, primary care or mental
No.
health.
Wait, so do you want, let's go over all of the Trump VA cuts.
By the way, real quick, I do want to say it pisses me off that Charlie Kirk won't have another debate with you.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think so too. I don't see where they specifically said they're only cutting certain types of people in the VA. I'm reading right here from
No, I'm
PBS
not.
that
I'm
they're
not saying
planning to
I
cut
wasn't quoting who
20,
they're
80,
cutting.
or
I'm saying that's
83,000
all.
jobs by slashing 17% of federal agencies that provide health care for millions of veterans.
All I'm saying is those are the only jobs I've seen affected so far. I don't know. Like I'm not. Don't quote that I'm saying he's not cutting out, primary care. I'm saying I have seen no effect of that. Like none of my primary care
So
physicians.
can I tell you the title? Five reasons
Yeah,
federal cuts are hitting veterans especially hard. That's the title of a PBS article.
yeah,
I
sure,
would
go
I
ahead.
would love for you to read that PBS article. It goes over one, the eroding of the federal workforce for the VA, the gutting of VA healthcare specifically, right? The destaffing of the hotline, the cutting in research, and then the looming cuts to other benefits.
It's kind of funny because I'll say this: I'm not truly a fan of yours. Well, the your political standpoints, right? My wife is a diehard fan of you.
W wife?
Yeah, yeah. Like I mean, diehard. She follows you religiously.
Yo, can we get some W's for the wife in the comment section here? And let me convince you then, bro.
So that's what I was going to get to. It, I know it's why do you support Trump, but I just want to ask, why should I have supported Kamala, or
Absolutely.
why should I support Democratic policy?
Yeah, so I think that democratic policy is significantly more targeted towards helping people who are in the working class or who are in need. Specifically, if we look, and we have to, by the way, look at it in comparison. So this is why I'm going to first bring up Trump, and then I'm going to clarify how Democrats are better. So Trump through the big beautiful bill, right, which is adding $3.4 trillion to the debt, right, and it's also cutting after-tax income for the bottom 20% of income earners, and then giving tax breaks to millionaires and billionaires. So while his policy is taking money from the poor and giving to the rich, Kamala Harris's policy is specifically targeted towards helping the working class, right? For example, she was advocating for a $6,000 child tax credit for the first year of a child's life, 3,600 through them being 5 years old, 3,000 through them being 18. When implemented in 2021 through the American Rescue Plan, it reduced childhood poverty by 45%. We can reference the $25,000 tax credit for first-time homebuyers for new homes to help build housing in places where people want to live. Because if we stimulate the housing development for new houses, that creates a higher supply of houses that already exist. Therefore, it would decrease the prices for houses that already have existed and have already been built, right? Along with the fact that the increase in the price that would be associated with new houses would actually serve as a benefit and a positive to stimulate suppliers to build more housing in places where people want to live, while also not being more expensive for people who are buying those houses because they get the tax credit to compensate for that lack of affordability imposed specifically by the increase in the price, which is
But
purposeful. And then we can also
what
reference the $2,000 cap on pharmaceuticals out of pocket, $35 cap on insulin for people who are on, for everyone overall, not just for people on Medicare, which actually was originally put in place through the Inflation Reduction Act that Kamala Harris was the tie-breaking vote on, which was also the largest investment in renewable energy ever. So like Democrats also acknowledge facts and science, right? Saying that like the climate is going to start cooling and that science just doesn't know it yet is something that Donald Trump has perpetuated in the past and is absolutely denying objectively verifiable information.
I'll agree to that because I do believe in climate change. Look, I lean conservatively, mostly moral based. I don't believe in abortion at all. Now, with that being said, still pro-choice. I know it sounds weird, but I don't have a so I
Wait,
don't
wait.
think that.
You're pro-choice, man. You're pro-choice. All okay. That's actually a totally common view. I want to let you know, Biden, right, and Kamala Harris probably hold the same view as you. I know Biden does hold that view that he's
Yeah,
anti-abortion, but he's
he's
pro-choice.
definitely.
That's
Yeah.
totally fair. If you want to be against abortion, that's totally you. It's totally fair. But if you're not trying to force it on other people, people don't have an issue with that. People are totally willing to accept that compromise because that's pro-choice. So you're actually on our side with that.
Yeah, and so that's where I get conflicted sometimes because there is that actually I'll refrain from cussing. There is things that I highly agree with on the left, and then there's things that I just cannot get behind, and the things that I cannot get behind are what prevents me from ever supporting, democratic policy, like like blanket laws. A lot of them surrounding like insurance. First of all, insurance is a scam. I don't think that anything that should is regulated and mandated for you to have, like it's mandatory for you to have, and it's a profitable industry. That just doesn't make sense to me.
Okay, so then you agree that insurance should be not for profit, correct?
Yeah,
Dude,
absolutely.
you're so liberal, man. You're lived out. You're advocating for universal health care now, Medicare for all, because that's actually advocating for no. You're actually advocating for a single payer system. You don't
I
even
know
think there
that's
should be
why I get
for profit.
defended. Look,
Dude, you're lived
there's
out. What are
things
you
that I
talking about? Wait, what are you
because
not
look,
liberal on? Actually, I don't even know
two
yet.
A, two A,
2A.
two
Wait.
A.
Okay, so what about 2A? Like, it's like, you know that,
I don't
like,
believe that anything should be regulated on two A.
really? Like, no, honestly, do you think people should be able to have nuclear weapons?
Okay, I'll pull it back. Some regulation, but I don't think that themselves should be regulated.
And I just want to let you know, that's like actually like a common leftist position is that shouldn't be regulated and that there should be a little regulation. So as you go more to the left, right, there seemingly is a little bit less um, conflict with like having access to guns, seemingly. But like I do just want to acknowledge the reality that like we're just in support of certain gun control legislations existing that are meant to like save people's lives. We're not saying that we should get rid of all, but like
So
there are
like,
certain guns I want to
do
get
you
rid
think
of that
there?
like I just don't think that it makes sense for people to have. Like
So like, may I ask like what type of weapon?
yeah, like I certainly like myself, I don't really care for people to have things like right? I don't think that it makes sense for people to have that. I don't think there's any good reason to. So like I would be totally fine for that to be taken away. But that's actually not even
But
something
why?
that Democrats
What
were
are you?
advocating for. I know a lot of people said that that's something that like Democrats were advocating for. Kamala Harris in this election, what actually wasn't even advocating to take away for that. But like I'm specifically saying like that's something I'm okay with, right?
I mean, there's
I have a
literally
certain condition. Here's my
video
condition, and I'll
evidence of
explain my
her
world.
saying
Go ahead.
there's literal video evidence of her saying that she's gonna come for God.
That's for
I mean,
2020.
yeah, but so what? Her position just vanished. Like it
I mean,
just.
her positions change over time. Yeah.
I guess fair assessment.
Like for
It's just hard to
example,
believe.
like can I give you an
Like
example that it's totally fair and I think it makes sense to understand. So for example, prior in 2020, she was saying she wanted to do a complete and total ban on fracking, but then in her administration, when working through like these types of bills in Congress, she realized that she has to compromise on things in order to be able to get effective legislation passed. So through the Inflation Reduction Act, there still were leasings for fracking within that, but it was the largest investment in renewable energy ever. So what she realized is that she can compromise on certain things that she like it can you know say that she wants to ban like in the long run, right? In order to be able to get effective legislation. So that's essentially like what she's doing in these contexts. Like she
okay.
probably herself does want to ban it, but is willing to not support that in the meantime or not willing to advocate for that right now, right? In a compromise specifically to do so. Right?
Yeah, and I
To
mean, I
like to
think
be able to like be like, yo,
the
this is
point of
my new,
that
this is what I'm running on now.
is yeah, exactly. This is what I'm running on,
Yeah, yeah,
right? So
yeah.
really,
Which is totally fair when it comes to different positions on control.
yeah. I just think it's look this part it is, and whether you like it or not. I mean, Donald Trump doesn't really flip flop a lot.
Really?
He's
Like,
just
really?
he's
Like,
just a
what about the
dictator.
Epstein files?
I mean, I think that's both sides, man. Look,
Wait,
you want
but that's him flip flopping. What about
so I
repealing
guess
or replacing the ACA? What about ending the war in Ukraine in 24 hours, lowering prices? What about gas prices going down? What?
I won't say. I mean, I don't think the Ukraine thing is really a flip flop. He just couldn't pull it off. I don't even know why he thought he could
That is
pull that off.
absolutely a flip flop. He put back the funding. He totally flip flopped on all these. Draining the swamp, like,
Well,
dude,
okay, draining the swamp. I don't even know what the that means. To be fair, like
yeah, but like, I mean,
politicians on both sides are pretty corrupt. So, um, and that what I'm saying is, I think we saw a lot more of Kamala trying to just play what people want to hear in order to get votes.
really, because like, I mean, what happened to no tax on Social Security, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime? I mean, we just got deductions for tips and overtime, and we didn't get anything for Social Security, even though Donald Trump claimed it over and over again.
Yeah, and it goes back to your thing about compromise, right? It was a bill that both sides met and
No, wait,
decided.
I'm sorry, but Trump was claiming that no, Trump was claiming no tax on overtime was in the bill when it wasn't. After the bill was already passed.
No tax on overtime or
Or,
deduction
oh,
on.
sorry, no tax on Social Security. He was
Okay,
claiming no tax on Social Security was in the bill when it wasn't. Right after the bill was already passed.
in House and Senate. Like they
Yeah,
have, he had already
after
signed.
it was
He
already
already
passed
signed
and
the document.
yes, it's already completely passed.
Very well. I don't know. It's just hard for me to. Like I said, it's hard. A lot of things, mostly 2A. I'll admit that it's hard to hop over to the other side
Here, like,
because I do
can I
have
ask
a
you?
massive fear of. I mean, I'm an owner. And I love not being able to worry about what's regulated. So I'm from Texas. I live in Arizona now. Both very heavy states. You know, in fact, I would say Arizona is a little bit more lenient on Texas. Um, yeah, I mean, they were one of the first constitutional carry states. So
Here, I have a question then. So like I think that from a democratic perspective, you can also be pro 2A. That's like totally fair, right? But like within the context of pro 2A, it's well regulated. And I also think that Donald Trump's a greater threat to the Second Amendment. Like, for example, he called for the termination of all rules, regulations, and articles, even those found in the Constitution. That's a threat of the entirety of the Constitution.
that I'm sorry, I didn't hear that last part. What'd you
Uh,
say?
Donald Trump called for the termination of all rules, regulations, and articles, even those found in the Constitution.
Yeah, and with that being said, I mean, like I stated in the beginning, there's very little I support about Trump right now. I mean, mainly I support just the fact that he's the president. It,
Like, wait,
and
what? Yeah, so like, what
I
about him?
supported
Like,
Biden. I
what about
supported
him?
Biden during his presidency, even though I didn't agree with a lot of shit that was going on. But no, I don't want America to ever fail. That's, I mean, I think that's stupid for anybody to want America to fail, or for a president to fail, or for a president not to do his job. I think he's overstepping in a lot of lanes. You know, like you said, removing the Constitution or getting rid of the Constitution. I mean, that's the most precious document. I think the Constitution is the most beautifully written document that could have ever been created. It allows humanity to continue to progress through what was written. I mean, because you
Like,
could,
by like amending it. Like, so like,
yeah,
okay, so then like, I mean, dude, you sound like you're pretty lived out. Like, here's my point. Like, if the only thing that is holding you back from supporting Kamala Harris was the distinction on like your access to like something that she wasn't even advocating for this time.
I mean, just
I think
any
that's not a reason to hold you back in
regulations.
that context. Like, I think that you and that like seriously like considering all of the other things that we can reference with Donald Trump, I can reference in terms of his character that you would disagree with. I'd reference in terms of the rest of his policy that you disagree with, economically speaking. I don't think that you'd agree with any of those other positions because it sounds like you are pretty lived like you were advocating for universal health care. You don't even think that that should be for profit. That's a progressive opinion, right?
Yeah, so I
You're
work in
to the left of
insurance
the
now.
Democratic Party.
So I just, like I said, insurance super scam. I mean, all insurance, not just healthcare. I mean, even home insurance, proper like any property insurance, car, home, boats, whatever. It's all a scam. But I just don't like big government either. So I might have these liberal standpoints or views, but I don't believe in big regulation. I don't believe that the government should oversee as much as they do. Uh,
Okay, wait, that's where these contradict. Okay, so if there's no market, how the hell do you ensure that everyone's covered? If there's no for profit, how do you ensure everyone's covered?
what do you mean?
You need the government to step in. The government is what's going to provide it in the context of there not being a market. So you have to have government. You say big government step in and do this if you want it to be not for profit. That's the reality of the matter.
Oh, and then you're saying like
Yeah,
they could
yeah, the
not cover
government does
certain
the
people,
insurance.
or they could avoid covering people just because it's not for profit anymore, is what you're saying,
Yeah, so
right? Like in a hypothetical.
essentially it has to be that the government is the insurance because they're not for profit. Does it make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I guess on things like that, sure, some oversight, but I'm saying like, so like blanket laws, right? Like everyone could choose where the hell they want to live, what state they want to live in, what city they want to live I don't think that uh, the federal government should have blanket laws that impact all states when it comes to like moral grounds, right? Like so, abortion laws. Like if people don't want to live in Texas, don't live in Texas. I mean, Texas
Oh,
has a
okay,
right to,
okay, okay. So,
you know, and that's
okay,
what I'm saying. Big
then,
government, like
so then here's where we need to have a distinction. Do you think a certain state should be able to say that like women shouldn't have the right to vote?
I hate you, Parker.
Now you're advocating for a federal law, right? So then like so like again you can give all these examples that's where it's going to be like you agree with it to some degree, and then we're just going to talk about like the examples in which you're going to apply it in, and that's why you're liberal, right? I understand like in the common sense you might think that like these principles like you have to apply them, but as soon as you provide examples such as that, you then get put back into the liberal position if it makes sense because that's like the we're not making any type of principled claim about like this is always applicable in every scenario. We understand that there's context to things, that they're in different scenarios it's going to provide different responses, and we're going to have general rules, but it's not going to be true in every single circumstance. So like again, when it comes to the government, right, for example, I don't want to apply government when in places where it's not necessary or in places where it's not useful, right? I don't
So
like big government. Like for
where would
example,
you
like I
put
don't
it?
like big government restricting my access to M, right? I don't like that. I think that's really bad, especially that they do it in some certain states. I don't like that that's banned at all in this country. I think it should be federally protected, that it's legal in this country. I don't like big government in that respect, but that's because it's unnecessary and it doesn't make sense to apply in that context. But government in plenty of other situations, it makes sense to apply. So we need to be real with like, yes, government in some circumstances makes sense and others doesn't. Yes, we can talk about the role of government. It's not always that just government's bad or government's good. We need to talk about how it's being applied in the circumstance on whether or not it's good. Right? I think typically providing social programs for people is like a good role of government.
I think so too. And so, like I said, don't like big government. But if you're taking government money, then I think there is needed oversight on that. Because, dude, I grew up in, I don't know if you know where the Rio Grande Valley is at. It's at the tip of Texas, one of the poorest communities in the entire nation. And I saw people abuse social programs my whole life. Selling food stamps or living on government housing, but they drive a 2000 at the time, right? Like a 2011 Mercedes. Like in high school. Like I just I don't I think that social programs allow a crutch, and sometimes people get used to that crutch and don't want to give the crutch up. And so that's why I do agree with social programs, but I think there needs to be like a time limit on them, or um, you know certain stipulations that prevent people abusing the programs, because I don't like paying taxes. I don't think anybody likes paying taxes, and I don't want the money that they're stealing from me to go and be used or abused by somebody else.
Okay, so like here, so we totally, I think everyone agrees with limiting fraud, right? No one disputes limiting fraud. There are guardrails in place to specifically prevent that from happening. It's such a small percentage of what we're referencing anyway, right? I think the main role that we're trying to make sure is that everyone's provided for. Yes, we want to limit the fraud. The fraud isn't most of the money that's being taken from you. We need to look at things like the government, right? In terms of the Department of Defense, that's what you need to look at. Look at them passing their audits. That's so much more of your tax money going into that
Yeah,
than what's going into like
absolutely.
food stamps or what's going into Medicaid. So I think the priorities in terms of what they're looking for in order to find fraud are like completely in the wrong place in the first place. Secondly,
Well,
like
what do you think about
I think we need
roads
to
then?
redefine what we think big government is. Right? I think when most people think of big government, they think of like the authority, right, of enforcement. That's what they think. I don't think big government is like people providing food or like health insurance. That's not big government. When I think of big government, I'm thinking
No, no, I'm not saying that's big
overrule
government.
from the government,
Yeah,
too much
yeah.
government in my life. You know what I mean? Whereas like when I'm thinking providing social services, If that's what's considered big government, well, then I like big government. But I wouldn't in my head think that's big government.
No, I wasn't calling it big government. I'm saying
No, I'm just
that
saying.
although I don't like big government, I would want oversight or more oversight in that area, right? And like you said, DoD, like defense spending is crazy as hell in America. I mean, I don't know what your opinion on Doge is. I don't really care because we're not talking about that. But I mean, finding out that the DoD is spending $2,000 per cup on coffee cups is absurd.
So I mean, a lot of the figures that they brought on Doge weren't itemized. You need to find like itemized ones of the
So
itemized
that might have been
deductions.
like
Yeah,
50 sleeves or whatever.
that's fine. Of the itemized things that they found, it was like $60 billion. So you can find some things, right? But like I even of the things that they were cutting, like there are a lot of the things I wouldn't agree with that they cut. I mean, they're not going after the actual fraud. They're not going over at the actual like issues. They if they were doing that, they'd be going after loopholes within the tax system. If they were doing that, they'd be going after the Department of Defense, and they didn't touch either of those. So that's where the fraud is happening mostly is the tax loopholes, right? That we think that billionaires and millionaires are using to evade taxes that they shouldn't be able to get access to. That's the true fraud in our systems that isn't currently being categorized as fraud.
Fair enough. Well, okay, so with you mentioning billionaires and millionaires, what's your opinion on um, capital gains taxes?
So I think that the idea that income tax rates are so much higher than capital gains tax rates is ridiculous. And I also think that something specifically with income tax and capital gains tax is that the tax brackets shouldn't stop at like 500K. Like I really don't understand why that's the case. Like someone who's making, I mean, like $2 million off of a capital gains investment is radically different than 20 million. Like we just need to be
Yeah, and
very
I
clear with
think a lot
that.
of that's outdated, right? Because nobody, I mean, 15, 20 years ago, nobody thought that somebody would be worth $200 billion.
Yeah, and
Like,
also like with inflation, like we also have to have these different types of figures adjusted for inflation, which we constantly have to change all the time. But like in terms of tax brackets, we absolutely need to ensure that tax brackets keep going. Like someone who's making $5 million in a year should be paying, more than someone who's making $1 million in a year, or $500,000 in a year. The fact that it's capped at like 500K is ridiculous in terms of the tax bracket increase.
man, some of your fans are super funny, by the way. I mean, they like talk. I just don't get why, because I think this is probably the best or most civil conversation
I,
that
th-
could.
I think most people are saying that this is constructive. Obviously, there's
Yeah.
always going to be some people, but like I do think that most people acknowledge that this is constructive, and also I think a lot of people see that you're pretty lived out, bro.
I don't know. I don't want to. It's not that I don't want to admit that. I just think I'm not saying being a liberal is bad. I'm not saying being a Democrat is bad. I'm not saying being a conservative is bad. I just think that it is hard for some people, like people like me, that have different moral aspects that prevent them. And I don't want to really discuss them because I don't want to offend any of your people on here. Like what things are preventing me from really leaning left.
Well, I mean, I would love to hear. I don't know what you mean by like offend anyone, but I would love to hear specifically what like is holding you back.
I just one of the biggest reasons is, and it's nothing. I don't care what grown adults do with their lives, and I support the LGBT community or LGBTQ, whatever the hell it's called nowadays. But I don't see why children have to be brought into anything. I have three kids. My daughter is my youngest or my oldest daughter is 5, and she's known the difference between a boy and a girl since she was 2. So I just don't get why. I feel like it children into what a parent wants them to be, right? Like so, like
I think what people are advocating for is to let kids be kids, let them figure out themselves, and to not enforce on them that they should be cis. That's kind of what people are advocating for. Age appropriate
but
education and letting kids find themselves. And I think the idea of like people who are part of the LGBTQ plus community, like children, is actually so like I think it's so off from reality because it's the other way around. It's that society has been forcing them to conform to its norms of not being trans, of being cis, right? Historically speaking, and that's also true for people who are gay as well, right? Throughout history. So
yeah,
people in the LGBTQ plus community clearly has been applicable. So then we have to understand that from that perspective. I think that's an important way to look at it, right? That like it's not that people are advocating to force this onto children or to push children on or to do this. I think people would disagree with doing that, right? Of pushing it onto children. You know, everyone disagrees with that. But what we think is that the things we're saying to accept people and to like let children be children to figure out themselves, right? People are misinterpreting as pushing it onto children for some reason.
well, when you open them up to these new ideas, right? I think as kids they still don't understand or grasp the full concept of what it means to be trans or what it means to be gender fluid or
Well, then
non-binary.
let them figure it out. Oftentimes, I want to
But
say they have a
I don't
better
think
understanding than their
so.
parents do.
So like this, like I didn't teach my kids like you're a boy, you're a girl. You know, they just that's just how they work. Like my daughter just knew, my son just knew. I'm sure my youngest daughter will soon know. Like I didn't force any gender roles into their lives. You know, I mean, there's not even gender roles really in mine and my wife's life. Mine and my wife's life. Like I help with cooking, I help with cleaning, I help like things that more traditional families would consider gender roles. You know what I mean? Like I don't have that in my household. I think a woman is just as capable of doing whatever she wants with her life as a man is. But I don't like the idea of opening these kids up to something that is just gonna. I feel like it causes more confusion than it does expression or self expression. Like
How does it cause more confusion to allow for children to figure out who they are in terms of their identity and to say it's okay to be trans and gay? Like seriously, like that's what people are advocating for, to say it's okay to be trans and gay. How is that more confusing for them? I would think it's more confusing to say that like you can't be these types of things, especially for people who are, right? For children who are gay and trans, that's incredibly confusing for them, right? For them to have to grow up into a society that is not accepting of who they are, right? You know, in terms of being gay and being trans, because you know then they have to be between, right? Like the norms all the time. That's incredibly hard for them to deal with, right? And they also
yeah,
have to deal with a lot of the people who are you know extremely bigoted because of the fact that it's not considered the quote unquote norm within our society. It should be considered, right, acceptable, right? That's what we mean by norm, like acceptable. It should be considered acceptable to be trans, acceptable to be gay, and we should allow for children to figure out who they are in terms of their identity without forcing these types of constructs onto them, right? Again, like I'm not saying that like we it isn't the case that like you know, there are obviously like certain contexts of like you buy things that are gendered in some contexts or you don't. But like I also like I just don't think that you should be enforcing a lot of these things on children. If they want to wear this, they want to wear that, let them wear it. Don't be like, "Oh, you can't wear this or you can't wear that." Right? You know, let them figure out those types of things for themselves when it comes to that. That's what I believe at least, and it's really not that deep for them to be able to figure that out. It's not like you know it's being pushed on them or anything like that, or it's just society that's causing these types of things. It's them figuring out who they are, and if they're trans, they're trans. If they're not trans, they're not trans, and they will figure that out, right?
fair enough. Fair enough. I'm not really like an argumentative person either. I used to
Yeah,
be, but I really am trying to see different sides, or so I can make my own opinion, man. And I do appreciate this conversation. I'm gonna let somebody else take some of your time. I'll probably stick around to hear the next person though.
for sure.
But thank you, Parker.
For sure. I would just say I would keep having dialogues with your significant other about this. It sounds like they're engaged like with this type of stuff, and they probably got you
It's
to
hard.
like engage with this content as well. I think that's incredibly good. Always try to critically think. always try to be genuine and open-minded. That's a really good thing, regardless of whether or not you end up agreeing with me on everything like that.
I
And
will
I
say
know, and
this.
also
To
one
make
thing
you feel
before you
better.
do, I also know a lot of people I engage with completely differently than I've also engaged with you. That's because the type of person that comes up is typically different than and not as open-minded, all right, as well. So like, also consider that like in terms of these debates, because a lot of the debates and conversations I have probably aren't going to go in the same type of way our conversation went,
Yeah,
because
and well, and
people aren't as
that's where
open-minded.
it's not constructive, right? I don't think that it needs to get to yelling or to aggressive talking.
It does
Like
sometimes, but yeah,
I
it's the
know, but I
reality.
don't see why. I think there's a difference between being um, passionate and being aggressive. So
Sure.
that's just my 2 cents on that. But thank you for your time, man. I hope you have a good night wherever you are.
Appreciate you.